So the next institution I'd like to welcome is the IMechE. I'll do the presentation with regard to the Young Members panel. So, as Rosie introduced me earlier, I'm the Vice Chair of the IMechE Greater Manchester Young Members panel. We're effectively a group of young members, young professionals and students, who come together to try and bridge the gap between education and industry. We hold regular events, just like the other young members panels. But I think overall, a big focus is on socialising and networking. That's one part we'd like to specifically encourage. There's a picture on the top right of one of the annual dinners that we have. We do tend to kind of join with the IChemE, which is good. Overall it's a very good evening, and it's something great to be involved in if you get the chance. Just in terms of some of the events that we held this year, so it's actually been a very successful year for us as a panel. We've grown substantially throughout the course of the year. One of the largest events we've held is the Gadathon, which is an existing event originally established by the Glasgow panel, and we kind of adopted that in Manchester this year, which consisted of, it's effectively a design challenge. We provided students with the opportunity to come in and design. We gave them a brief, we gave them some rules to the challenge, we gave them some requirements, we asked for some deliverables. We tried to effectively mimic industry. We kept it kind of light and fun. Us as engineers, we like designing, we don't necessarily like the admin side, so we stripped all the admin out and we just kept it focused on design. And it was very well received and a very successful event for us this year. There's been numerous site visits as well to various businesses around the northwest. We have the SOFI, so Speak Out for Engineering event as well. There's a few faces around the room I can recognise as well who presented this year. We held a chartership webinar encouraging students to start considering their chartership journey, along with Cheers to Careers that was held last month. That's a highly successful event for us. We keep outgrowing venues year upon year upon year. So that was very, very positive. The structure of that event is effectively a networking event and careers event, stripping back the formalities and keeping it light and formal. So that's one thing that we like to host every year. And then lastly, just the chain event that we have going on at the moment. So I'll stop talking now and I'll hand over to Ian Hancock, who will talk us through the Process Industries division of the IMechE. There you go.
Good morning. So it's good to be here to talk about the IMechE and particularly about the Process Industries division. A little bit of move on to there, right. So what is Process Industries? It's a wide group, and a lot of people don't fully understand what is involved in it, and there's a lot of opportunities in it, particularly for young graduates. There's a lot of job opportunities. It's a growing sector. So the process industries are made up primarily of the bulk material handling group in the IMechE. That's the group that I also chair, as well as chairing the Process Industries Board. We handle everything from powders to packaging to waste, and the sectors we cover are quarries, chemical plants, fertiliser plants, food, pharmaceutical, ports, power generation. It's a wide sector. It's not an industry in its own right, but it's part of many industries. Another part of the process industries is the food and drink sector. Food and drink sector is huge and it's growing, and lots of opportunities for young graduates moving into that. Oil, gas and chemicals. This is the extraction of oil, gas and chemicals. Now, people say oil and gas is dying because of the stopping of the use of fossil fuels. There's a lot of opportunities still. Oil is still needed. Your wind turbines have got gearboxes, they've got oil in them. There's lots of opportunities where oil and gas is still a key part of the sector, even if it's not being used for fuel and other traditional petrochem functions. Pharmaceuticals. We all need pharmaceuticals. Again, it's a good sector to get into, and bulk handling has got links to that as well as to the food and drink. Then we've got the upstream oil and gas. That sounds a bit vague, but basically it's the chemical industries. It's the industries that are taking the extracted oil and gas, turning them into products. That could be plastics, it could be chemicals, it could be processing it for fuel. And water and wastewater. They're the people who deal with making sure you turn your tap. When you turn your tap on, you've got water. When you flush the toilet, it goes away. But also with industrial water. Most chemical plants produce a wastewater. That's got to be processed. So that's also a key part of them. So it's quite a diverse sector. On the IMEC Process Board, we organise special lectures. We represent the process industries at various levels. And we try and get the message out there to people that it's a great sector to be working in. There's a lot of opportunity for travel, there's a lot of opportunity to move between sectors. Just a diversity statement there. The IMEC is a very diverse institute and we welcome all. But that's not really true now. We've supposed to have 3 speakers here today, but unfortunately I'm the only one. The other 2 couldn't make it. So a little bit about me. I started my career in 1985. I was a technician apprenticeship in the aerospace industry and defence. Big change to go into the process industries, but as Mark said earlier, you don't have to start where you end up. There's lots of opportunity to change sectors. So I had a career change, moved into the heavy industries with bulk particularly of an interest. Quarries, fertiliser, cement, many of those sort of industries. I had 14 years with Bradley Pulveriser, 39 years within the bulk material industry. I've seen many things from specialist materials to the sustainability side, where we're now looking at recycling of wind turbines, protein shifting, lithium for the EV batteries. So a lot of things are happening in the industry that's changing away from our traditional cement and quarry products. I'm a registered fellow with the IMEC and I'm also registered with the IET. I chair both the Bulk Materials Committee and the IMEC Process Board. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the process industries and then into the sustainability side, particularly around my speciality of the process of the bulk materials. That's just summing up a little bit more on what I was just saying earlier on about the industries. So you've got oil and gas extraction, chemicals, water treatment, farm and food, and bulk. So, what are we doing about circular economy and sustainability? The short answer is not as much as we should be. Other sectors are ahead of us, and that's why there's a great opportunity for young people coming into this sector. What is being done is being driven through legislation and lack of raw materials. And we'll talk about lack of raw materials when I get onto a case study bit in a minute. But we are seen as one of the big polluters. Chemical plants, people see them, huge plants, stacks there, fumes going out the chimneys. People think quite often it's just steam, but it's seen as a pollutant. So we've got an image to change, and that's part of what we're trying to do through the IMEC, through government pressures, to change that industry image. So, as I say, we're going to a little bit of sustainability. One of my specialities is the fertiliser industry. Fertiliser industry is under a lot of pressure to clean up its act. Basically, a lot of the fertilisers being made traditionally are made with petrochem, so you've got your nitrogen fertilisers coming from your petrochem basis, you've got your phosphates, which is your P, and your potassiums, which is your K. It gives you your NPK, your 3 main fertilisers. Raw materials are getting harder to come by. The nitrogen side, because of the pressure on the petrochem industry, is becoming a big thing, and there is a lot of projects now underway for green ammonia and green nitrogen. We just got involved in one in Paraguay, where it's going to be a totally self-sustaining plant, circular economy. The chemical reaction from making the nitric acid will produce steam that will power the plant, both electrically and through the steam drying. So that means once it starts, there'll be no other energy used other than the chemical reactions in the process. Phosphorus, essential to the plant growth. but it's given huge issues now because the grades of traditional phosphorus are getting hard to get, they're getting low quality, so there's got to be a sustainable way of improving that. Many things are being worked on, one of which is sewage sludge, so taking from the sewage works, turning the cake into a phosphorus fertiliser through processing it, so recycling waste, whether that's human waste, animal waste, it's all being looked at. Another way is to take bones from the animals, where we've got chickens and other animals, using the bones, recycling that to reclaim the phosphorus. This is one of the things we're also looking at more is both with phosphorus and nitrogen, over application affects the soil, it can also wash into waterways, so we're looking at encouraging farmers to use less, use it more thoughtfully rather than piling a lot of fertiliser on the land. So these are all things that are happening in the fertiliser industry to make it more sustainable. Then when you get to the actual plant itself, as I say, there's a green ammonia plant being done, but one of the things that we're having to look at is you see there in that top picture, there, that's a typical fertiliser plant, not a pretty place. Stacked with lots of what appears to be contaminants coming out of it. It's actually mainly steam, but the general public don't see it as that. So there's a lot of perception to come out of it as well as actual improvements. But the fertiliser industry is working really hard to try and get that perception better. Mention on there about lagoons, one of the issues is what we do with the waste. So instead of putting it into lagoons, there's a lot of work been going on in taking that waste and putting it back into the process. So when you make phosphoric acid, which is a key part of making a peat fertiliser, they're taking the acid now, as they make the acid, they make a gypsum. That's been dumped as waste because of radiation levels in it. That radiation level is now being cleaned up so they can use it for building materials. So there is a circular economy starting, but we're behind the curve. Another little case study here is the cement industry. Zena mentioned cement, it's been mentioned quite a bit this morning. It's a major building material. It's also a major energy user. If you look at these statistics, in 2023, we emitted 2.4 billion tonnes of CO2 in the cement industry. That's 6% of total emissions. That makes us, that if we were a country, it would be the fourth largest emitter of greenhouse gases. That was 2023. A lot of work is being done to bring those numbers down. Pozzolans are being added to the cements. Pozzolans being fly ash, limestone, natural pozzolan. We're looking at a lot of different materials for this. The current cement specs allow us to add 20% pozzolan. That brings your CO2 emissions down significantly. But there's more work to be done. The cement is a key construction material. It's also a key polluter, so we have to do something about it. So one of the things we've been doing is, as it says there, BS7979, adding calcium carbonate. But that's still a natural resource, so that although it's plentiful, calcium carbonate is one of the most plentiful natural resources in minerals, it's still not a long-term solution. So another thing that has been looked at in the industry, and I'm doing quite a bit of work on myself, is to take the old cement from buildings that are being demolished, crushing that down, using the CO2 from the kilns to put back through it to reactivate it so we can start to reuse that cement. It's not of a grade that is suitable for high-stress concrete, but it does a lot of the low-stress stuff. This is being worked on quite heavily. A lot of expert work going into it. We're trying to make a circular economy of cement so that we can actually start to be more environmentally friendly and bring down that CO2. There's some webinars that we hold on many of these things. Okay.
Okay, so we've got a good number of questions coming through, so keep them coming. Okay, so to get started, we have a question for you, Kit. So, how did you progress to the point to where you were chosen for such a project? How did that happen?
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So, interestingly, I actually applied for the project back in 2020, and I was selected to be part of the team in February 2020. Great, all good, ready to go. We were going to go in May 2020, and there was obviously a global pandemic. So we were a team for 2 years in forming that, and then we went in 2022. To apply, so as I said, Mott MacDonald and Balfour Beatty sent a team of 11 people, and the questions were, what are your motivations for going? What are your previous experiences of volunteering and charity fundraising? Because that was also part of the project. How do you work as well in a team? And what fears or challenges do you expect to face? I'd done volunteering at the IC. I'd volunteered all through university. I'd volunteered on children's summer camps where I'd worked in very different teams. So anything that you're doing, extracurricular or through various things, all adds to getting those opportunities. I was honest with myself about my fears. Nervous about working in a country I'd never been to, nervous about working with a group that I hadn't met yet, could be different clashes of personalities, and I also said I didn't know what the toilet situation would be like, because we were using pit latrines, and I'd done a dissertation on pit latrines. But my biggest thing that I sold and spoke about was why I wanted to go. If you're passionate about something and you can communicate it, then it's not the level of experience that will stop you. Mott MacDonald had a limit that you should be 2 or 3 years into the business before you could apply, so that you weren't too junior and that you could really make the most of it. I've seen other organisations like WSP and ARUP and various others send teams out, and it's a global charity, so I've seen teams from America and Australia and things go as well. If you would want to do something and you're passionate about it, make the most of it and apply.
Ian, this question is for you. How can people get more involved with iMakeE?
The way to get involved is to get involved with your local hubs. If you're in the northwest here, you've got some really good local hub on the process industry side. Get involved locally, get involved at TAC level. There's technical activity committees for all of the different disciplines, whether that's railway, aerospace, automotive, process. Get involved, volunteer. You'll get more out of it than you put into it, I'll guarantee you. You network, you meet people, it helps develop your career. It's a great thing to get involved with.
So this is a question specifically for Mark, but I think we can open it up to the wider panel as well. So if we're looking at the future of engineering and trying to encourage the next generation to get involved, what could we do as modern day engineers to try and encourage the future generation?
Yeah, I think it's the entire STEM industry needs more people, and I think one of the areas that a lot of traditional engineering type companies and things haven't realised, technology is now being used across the board everywhere. If you want to look at buying a house, renting a house, you can see a 3D laser scan of most of them on an estate agent's website now. Why are there better 3D laser scan models on Rightmove than we have of nuclear reactors? And that's worryingly true in a lot of cases. I think it's really just kind of showing all those opportunities and really like transferable skills. There are so many things that people do and have experience in that they don't kind of recognise. I think linking with a lot of the volunteer stuff and some of the extra things, like that's really powerful. And if people are looking for sort of graduate scheme jobs, if you want to apply through an engineering graduate scheme, you need the engineering degree to get through step one. Everyone applying for it will have an engineering degree. It's all those extra things that will really inspire interest. So I would say, like, you really do want to get involved. There's so many opportunities, and also engineering in particular, it's a great one where you can transfer into all sorts of things. Like lots of people going to be project managers, people going to work in finance industries and other things. Engineers can transform into lots of different roles, but it's very hard for other people who don't have an engineering degree or background to then become an engineer. It really is kind of a one-way thing, and I know personally I've had to fight not to become a project manager And it's just personally, I just don't want to be one, even though arguably you could get paid more money for doing it, which is why a lot of people do it, and there's nothing against that. I would just say it really is one where we need to keep more engineers in engineering. And yeah, I think a great route for particularly large organisations is graduate schemes. They're very good, there's lots of training, but then also there are a lot of smaller companies who will kind of bring people on through similar different routes. So yeah, does anyone want to add to that? Or?
It's about how can we as modern day engineers encourage the future generation to get involved in engineering?
Yeah, so everyone should look for the passion, I would say. And engineering is it's a starting point. It's not that I'll stick to it all the way, but it's an opening to everything. So I would say it's an opportunity. It's changed the way of approaching things, changed the way we see things, change the way how we structure our answers or tackle our problems. And just compare yourself and other colleagues if you're not an engineer, just with someone who's a doctor or a humanitarian. We see things differently in how we structure our brain. So that's something that would help you to solve any problems in the world, even your own problems, and can take you to a lot of places. So take it as a starting point, foundation for a great future.
Love that. I'm going to reiterate the point of volunteering. You in this room could all inspire future generations by as little as half an hour to an hour, speaking to schools, mentoring someone, telling someone about why you've picked your career choice, your university choice, your degree subject. They're using the term micro-volunteering for small bits, but it really does have an impact. She Can Engineer are here today. I volunteered with them previously on just a speed networking event. There are plenty of organisations that do that sort of stuff. I would just really reiterate the point of that. When speaking to school children, I say that I'm like a doctor, because bridge engineers go and fix bridges for years to come. We make sure that they're protected and they're safe. So it's thinking of those analogies that make it simpler for the general public to understand what engineers do and to dispel the myth that a civil engineer fixes cars.
I think I'd reinforce the volunteering one without a doubt, but for the process industries there's a lot of change happening and it's an exciting time. The heavy industry side of it is going, the dinosaur industries that I was brought up with, but there's a lot of interesting stuff for new graduates coming into the industry. There's protein shifting, there's EV vehicles. On the food and drink side, there's sustainability, there's trying to move away to more sustainable foods. They're even harvesting insects for protein now. Lots and lots of really interesting stuff. And even as a mechanical engineer in the process industries, you get the opportunity to get involved in the process, the chemical side. It's a really interesting area to be.
I can definitely resonate with that. I mean, I would just add, I'm not on the panel, but I would add the opportunities are there, and volunteering is a great way to get involved, just spending, as Kit mentioned, just a few hours every year, presenting to a school or, sharing your kind of daily role, can definitely make a difference in somebody's life. I mean, personally, I didn't really know what an engineer was until I was having to choose my subjects in college, which is actually quite late if you think about it. So, no, I definitely resonate with that.
Thank you. This question is aimed at Kit and Zaina. Have you ever faced any issues in engineering from being a woman? You're both very positive, very successful. I'm just wondering. Yeah.
So it's a hard question. It's really hard. Why? It's like, I didn't face anything because since uni you'd be the minority in the class, and then you start seeing the boys or just colleagues, and then you don't really see the difference, and you just deal with them about beam, W square, moment, shear, and the conversation is just technical. So, and then how you see things, and then you go to workplace, and it's the same, and you feel like you're that professional person. You got another personality, But at work, you just switch on to be very professional because you just want to show them you need to solve the problem. Because some people could see you like, no, I can solve it. You don't need to prove it. So I have to wear my blazer when I started every day, so people doesn't see me at uni. So that was something that my blazer is with me every day, and now even at work it's with me. But when I was 21 or 22, I needed my blazer, but now they can see it with the level of experience, so you don't see it. That's something, I don't know if you want to add, and I can come back to it.
Yeah. So I think I have faced some challenges. I did a few summer placements, and one of them was site-based. And it was fantastic. I was working on Battersea Power Station in London, doing the refurb. There were 1,000 people on site. Obviously, in civil engineering, in many industries, you can be a consultant or a contractor. And I had a summer placement with a fantastic engineering organisation who were very pro-equality, pro-50-50 gender diversity. However, that doesn't stop who you may interface with. I was questioned at every turn, every day that I spent on site for 12 weeks. It was enough to be, it was minor. What are you doing? Why are you doing that? Oh, the bossy one's back. Little comments that if you just heard once or twice, you'd ignore them. But if it was daily, it was enough for me personally not to want to be site-based. So when it came to applying for graduate jobs, they offered me a job straight away, and I politely said, at this moment in time, I think I'm going to pursue consultancy only. I was happy to prove my age, but I didn't want to prove my gender. And then actually within Mont McDonald, I'm very fortunate to have a really strong group of women as my friends, that when something happens, like my name Kit could be male or female. I get misgendered all the time. It's those little bits that you then prove yourself. And since getting chartered, so having CNG-MICE after my name, that helps with the imposter syndrome. It really helps to prove that your voice is valued, you own that space, and people want you to be there. It's so important that we have women in the industry and people from all backgrounds, because without diverse teams, you don't represent the industry. It was a book called Invisible Women by Carolyn Criado Perez, where she talks about different engineering parts where women weren't involved in the design of hurricane houses. So there wasn't a place for the goat to be tied up by the kitchen, and there wasn't the kitchen outside. So they'd missed that completely. And it really just opens your eyes to some of those key stats. So that's why it's so important to have things like International Women Engineering Day, International Women's Day. And by saying this about women, it helps all minorities, all diversities across that. So it's just important we give everyone the floor and everyone a chance to speak.
Yeah, if you allow me, I'm just going to add something because I feel it's got the platform to talk about it. Just one thing, why we don't really see a lot of women in engineering. And maybe, thankfully, the industry start to change and start taking things seriously. What I mean, so we see a lot of nurses, a lot of teachers, and a lot of work that give the woman the flexibility to balance her life at home with kids and profession. I think engineering was a bit harsh on that, but things are changing, and maybe it's not us, but we are the advocate to keep pushing. So we're very pleased when we see a senior engineer, principal chief, able to balance her life, have a full life. And this is what I think is our responsibility, to keep pushing for the next generation. We might be struggling at the moment, we're in the middle age because we are achieving and we're keeping the balance. But I'm saying that because it's our responsibility again to keep pushing, to make sure that we have this right, whatever is the flexibility, to make sure we have more women engineering and diversify it.
Yeah, just building on that point about work-life balance, I'd just like to remind everyone, if you do see a question on Menti that you want answered, please do thumbs them up. But just talking about work-life balance and some of the associated effects, so I'm sure this is for the panel. So mental health is a huge issue in the construction industry in particular. I personally see this a lot in my particular role. So what habits, routines, etc. do you implement to keep yourselves passionate about your job and kind of keep the day-to-day going? I'll start with you, Matt.
I'm neurodiverse, like right across the board, dyslexic, ADHD, autistic. Some people could potentially tell off the presentation when they get excited about robots. I think kind of it comes across from what I'd say everyone's presentation. If you work on something you're passionate about, it makes work so much easier. I've worked for 9 or 10 different companies. Quite a few of the times I've left them, I got bored, to be totally honest. And then it just felt like, what's the point? What's this? I want some different. I really like variety. That works for me. I know for a lot of other people, they kind of prefer routine and want to know what's coming. I like the crazy unknown where today I'm doing this, tomorrow who knows, whatever. I really like that. And I think it's kind of finding that work balance that fits for you, that realizing you don't have to adapt the situation, like your personality to the situation. You want to find something that actually works for kind of, so you can be yourself. And I think kind of then beyond that, companies have got so much better. There are mental health champions right across the board in every single organisation I've worked for. And kind of if you need help, just speak up. Don't be afraid. It's not a sign of weakness asking for help. It's a sign of strength. Yeah.
Think 2 things on it. So how to stay motivated, and make sure you have a smart yearly goal. That's how I keep it. Because I got lost half of the way. I don't know what I'm doing. People don't talk about it, but when I sit down with myself, know why I'm doing that. It can take time to find out why, but make sure you have a yearly smart goals you want to achieve. And don't be harsh on yourself. Just assess it, change the plan, and see if it's working or not. And this is how we stay motivated. I think I'm just sharing a tip about the mental health, just briefly. Like, not speak up, but speak up to the right person. Make sure you find the right safe person who worth to listen to you. They are there, we are here, we're around. And I would say, like, separate between work and life. Because that's something that it's a nice balance to keep. I'm just being too honest. But yeah, and speak up to the right person and make sure you have your goals.
Remember to reflect on the things that go well. It's really easy to just think about the bad things. So last week before, all really busy. On the bus home, I opened my notes app and just jotted down my successes from the week. Rather than what I still had left to do, I was trying to remind myself of what had gone well, because we ultimately just move on to the next task. That's really good, of just ticking those successes, that small boost of dopamine. Oh yeah, I did do that, that was really well done. And then in terms of like managing my mental health, friends, reaching out to friends, family, etc. like that, but also making time to read that trash book or watch that guilty TV show, or however you process it. I like a good walk with a podcast, and not an engineering one. That was during chartership. I've moved away from that. Really sort of trashy podcasts. You can speak to me about them later, but it's finding what you love and making time for it.
As far as motivation and keeping that drive going, for me, when I joined the company I work for, we was traditionally driven into the minerals industry. We'd been doing it for over 100 years. During my time, I've changed the company into a more modern thinking company. We're involved in a lot of very interesting stuff, a lot of stuff I can't talk about because we're under NDAs, but it's cutting edge technology, and it's going to change a lot of the way the process industries work. So that's the driver that keeps me engaged, is moving on and doing something that's not been done before, turning that into an actual industrial process. A lot of the time we have research people who have done it in the lab, and they come to us and say, right, we've done this in the lab, and now we want to make this a real process in industry. That's the real challenge, that's what drives me. As for mental health, you've got to make time for yourself. As Kit says, you've got to step away from it sometimes. For me, it's the dogs. I've got 3 dogs, I love to walk them. I make time every day to walk across the fields with them and have time on my own to reflect. And as I do agree with Kit, you need to reflect on what you've succeeded with and not dwell on what's bad.
Thank you.
So the next question is aimed at Ian, but I want to open up to anyone. We'd love to hear all your opinions. So obviously gas and oil is still quite essential in the UK. How feasible do you think the UK's net zero targets are?
Why did I get that one? Gas and oil is essential, but what we've got to get away from is burning it. We've got to get away to using it for processes where we need it and get away from the burn of it. As for the net zero targets, I think we're crippling ourselves a little bit with those, and I know that's probably not a popular opinion. Yes, we've got to get there, but there's a lot of, as worldwide polluters, we're a very low percentage of what other countries are doing. Other countries have got to do more work than us. And yeah, that might not be the most popular comment, but we're going the right way, but we mustn't allow it to cripple us.
I'm going to pass this one.
Yeah, maybe just being in the nuclear, I think we're on the way. It's very ambitious, very ambitious. But we are on the way, and we should start somewhere. So keep that positivity.
I think I'd just add that it's going to happen. I think the targets are, let's call it optimistic, but I think it's also, we don't want to hit net zero too early with short-term solutions and realise in 10 years' time half of them break and then we'll end up back to burning oil and gas. When we get to it, we want to get to it at a point where it is sustainable long-term, and if it takes a few more years to get there, I think that's the right way. Also, you've got to balance it from the cost, where you don't want to make electricity 3-4 times the price it already is. It's already way too expensive in this country, and kind of with the, it needs to be economically viable for people so it doesn't put people into essentially poverty. But I think it's going in the right direction. When it'll get there, I wouldn't put any money on a date.
No, thank you all for your insight. How are we doing for time? Are we have time for one more question? Okay. Okay, a question I'd like to ask around public perception of technology. So, one issue I faced on one of the projects I worked on, a hydrogen trial. You type in hydrogen on Google, and you see the Hindenburg. You type it, you hear nuclear, people think of, Chernobyl. How can we as engineers change public perception? Because ultimately, in our roles, we're trying to, pioneer certain technologies, but then public perception is still likely to make or break, whether a project goes ahead. So I'll open this up to the panel. We'll start with you, Mark.
I think, there's a lot of misinformation, confusion, assumptions. I think it's just trying to speak to people kind of on their level, and I think a lot of the industries really don't help ourselves we can go super technical super quickly, and it just goes over people's heads and confuses them. Like a lot of people what's a kilowatt hour? What's a this? What's a this? You can't, if you don't understand it, you can't realise it was something. I think using kind of comparisons that people can understand, and that's kind of what I try to do with the electric cars. People can realise how many things an electric car is type unit, and it's also just kind of showing that we do kind of need to do this, and a lot of the mistakes of the past, we can't change the past. This has happened, we need to learn from that, and we do, and we have. And it's kind of showing people that actually, we're here to kind of make this better. We can't change the situation that's there, but we can do everything we can to clean it up, to make it more sustainable in the future, and kind of go from that. And I think that works well. And it's just attending big events like New Scientist Live, like Big Bang Fair, where you get to actually engage with people and do more kind of outreach and that sort of thing. It's really powerful. And you get some very good positive feedback. And most of the time, particularly nuclear, very few people are anti-nuclear. A lot of people have questions about it. They're just more unsure about it. And it's kind of educate on that sort of side. And I think that really does kind of help.
Yes, I started by saying no when the opportunity came. I was not fully convinced that this should be the way. So I can relate with the public when they are scared to join that world. But now I think that the culture is changing because we are learning from the past. And I can see that on a day-to-day or monthly workshops and learning, because we need to learn what happened, what went wrong. And the way we're approaching things is the curiosity, questioning. And I've been saying them because this is how I've been trained now. Why? How? Are you sure? What about this? How about this? And that gives the people and give people who are supporting them by financing the project the safety that we are doing our best in doing it right. We're training and blah blah blah. So I think that's what's been changing. And from the bigger funds, we already have a very strict system, which is like we got the ONR, past the ONR, we got these things, the one and that. It's a lot of things. So learning from the past, keep an eye, like learn from the opportunity, and yeah, why not safe nuclear options, for example. And it's just to stress on something, it's not the only solution. So if we look at the cycle and how to get more sustainable, it's one of the options we're going to have more energy sourced than what's needed, because we can't trust the wind 100%, we can't trust the solar panel 100%, we can't trust whatever we're getting that clean energy from. And that is coming also, the nuclear one. So it's the whole thing is changing. Yeah, so just questioning attitude.
So it's absolutely about changing public perception. Obviously there's been other civil and structural engineering disasters, Grenfell being the one that's been quite recent around sort of the fire safety. The IC did a campaign on their 200th anniversary of hashtag This Is Civil Engineering, and there are various plaques and posters and banners. There's one at Deansgate. It's showing what civil engineering is. I made that joke about being called a car mechanic earlier because I have been. People don't know what it is and what our industry does. High Speed 2 is the other project that will often get mentioned here. High Speed 2 should never have been called High Speed 2. It should have been called High Capacity 2. It had to run at that speed to enable the capacity of the network. My mum questioned why I was working on it. She said, "Oh, you're destroying those woodlands," because Chris Packham was on Radio 4 talking about it. We, as engineers, are fighting an uphill battle on some of that, because actually the whole railway network hasn't really been put in place since the Industrial Revolution. So it was all quite old, and it needed that. And what High Speed 2 does is it does the faster services, so the small stoppers trains can operate more frequently between your intermediary towns and cities. It also gets freight off the road and onto the rail, which is much more sustainable. So then you're easing the road pressures, but that was never how it was badged. So it's a miscommunication piece by us as engineers, actually, but the wider government. And until we fix that and really champion the success of engineering, then we won't achieve that.
I'm going to pick up on the hydrogen one again, and I'm going to turn that back also to the oil and gas question. We've done a lot of work taking gas, methane, and splitting it through a plasma to make clean hydrogen for the heavy process industries, so that reduces their CO2 output. The product you get from when you split it is a product called graphene. Graphene is used a lot in the plastics industry and in the EV battery industry. So there we've took oil and gas, made a clean fuel, and a method of making electrical power for the EVs, clean from it. This isn't getting publicised. All people are seeing in the press is oil and gas is bad. If it's used right, it's not. So that is definitely a perception thing. And it's some of the exciting stuff we do in the process industries that isn't really getting publicised in a proper way.
I don't know about you, but I'm very much enjoying this discussion, and I wish we could continue, but we are running to a schedule. I think we'll break for lunch now. Apologies we couldn't answer all of the questions, but please, over lunch, come and see the speakers and try and get your questions answered if we've not had a chance to answer them here. I think we'll break for, I think it's just under 40 minutes, so let's try and get back in here for, let's say, 1:10 and there's free lunch downstairs, so that's a benefit. So please do try and stay around. So the day's only just getting started. We have a good lineup of speakers in the afternoon, so please do try and stay around. Thank you.